I'm Susan Hopkins, and I want to introduce you to the Self-Reg framework. This is Dr. Stuart Shanker's framework for self-regulation, and just briefly tell you how it might be able to help you with the children in your care. So the first thing you need to know is there's a big difference between self-regulation and self-control. There are over 447 definitions of self-regulation in the literature. That means there's a lot of confusion out there. So if I was to ask each one of you how you define self-regulation, I would hear things like self-control. I would hear things like social emotional learning. I would hear things like managing and suppressing emotions. I might hear something about executive functions or being able to delay gratification or pay attention, organize your materials and your things. I might hear things about relationships or social skills. There's all sorts of really different ideas about what self-regulation is. And I'm not here to suggest that if you're working with one of those definitions, that's wrong. It's just really important to understand there are these different definitions, and we're talking apples to apples. And you might think I'm talking about children complying, and I'm not talking about children complying. I'm really talking about what's beneath all of those behaviors that we're seeing, and really trying to understand and manage stress. So what we're working with is the original definition of self-regulation, which is just that. It's about understanding and managing stress, and stress in all its complexity, and not just stress as a negative. Stressors are just a part of life. It's a part of being human, and we're never trying to get rid of all the stressors. It's not actually possible. What we want to do is begin to understand how to promote growth-promoting self-regulation, which is really about managing these stressors. So it's really important to understand that that's the definition we're working with. In self-reg, what we begin to address is understanding that some children struggle with self-regulation. Some children struggle with dysregulated stress response systems, and that can show up in your centers and in your contexts and behavior. You might have children having outbursts or shutdowns or meltdowns, or they're having problems with peers, or you're trying to focus on a story and they're around the center, or you're getting a whole lot of no or pushback, or it can be any sorts of these areas that are signs that it's behavior for us to unpack. So in a self-control paradigm, we might look at things like, we might try our timeouts, we might try having a conversation, asking children to name things, we might try having children to take accountability. And I'm not suggesting that any of those are the wrong thing, but one thing that you have to keep in mind is, so we do that in the moment, does that change anything for the child? Or do we seem to have the same child doing the same thing over and over again, and we keep trying, beating our heads against the wall, trying to find a way to get them to change the behavior? And so that just tells us, if we take a self-control approach, we're working on the surface level behaviors. And what we really need to do is see the child with soft eyes, as I spoke about in another video. So really seeing with science, a little bit of science, that recognizing if I was wearing the Fitbit of the future, and to see what was going on in the child's brain and body, most likely I'm going to see a whirlwind of stressors. And so that little human in front of you is trying to manage all this stress. And when I say that, you think consciously manage, it's things that their brain and body are doing all the time, right? We think about the window of tolerance, which is how much stress a person can manage in any particular moment. And our little people have overflowing backpacks, and it comes out in behavior. So you'd be able to see that there was more going on in front of you. And I mean, one of the great signs is if you try the timeouts, and I prefer time ins. Children need those interbrain connections, which we talked about in another video. They need us to be with them no matter what they just did, to stay and connected with us. But if it really is about self-control, it involves just the thinking part of the brain, the intentional choice part of the brain, and our strategies will work, and they will work fast, and they will hold. If they're not working, self-reg is really a pathway to seeing a child differently, to being able to work on some of the underlying stressors and challenges with the child. So it really is a framework with 5 domains. It's holistic. We look at the biological, the emotion, the cognitive, social, and pro-social areas of being a human being. We look at the experiences, the stressors, and the strategies within all of those areas. And then we have a 5 practice framework. So the first one is reframe behavior. It's the most important thing. If we really believe the child chose and is, what we may find other words for it, but a bad kid, or not complying, or doing that on purpose, or he knew better, no matter what. So I challenge you to think about that no matter what, because it's, we may have a child that puts a big smile on their face. Yeah, I know I hit him, right? That's not okay. But that's not who you are. But we have to not be blocked by just because the rational brain has showed us some kind of explanation that there's not more going on. Remember, if it's just self-control, your strategies will work. They will work, and they will work over time, and you'll change the trajectory just from the good strategies that are about self-control. If those aren't working, which in my experience, often they don't work and they don't hold over time, then go on to really thinking about changing, really understanding what's beneath it. Reframe the behavior. We have to see children differently. Then number 2, we recognize and reduce stress. So we look at stressors in all those domains, not just the obvious ones. We can't get stuck on it's because of this or that, or mom or whatever he came with for breakfast, or he didn't, was up all night, or she this. We have to really think about, okay, what are all the little stressors? What are all the energy zappers that are contributing to this child having an overflowing backpack in a negative way, right? And then we try to reduce the ones we can, the hidden stressors, and we notice ourselves in the mix, right? We notice ourselves in the mix because sometimes we are adding stressors that aren't contributing to growth promoting self-regulation. And then we begin to think about how to build stress awareness, internal sensations of stress. And nothing comes out of nowhere. And so we think it's just, that exploded and boom, and it was because of this one little thing. No, there's more. Why and why now? And practice number 5 is to restore. Absolutely crucial, especially when we are all feeling overstressed, is how do we begin to restore energy, we restore hope, we restore relationships, and we're really working on that foundation of everything.